Today's guest is Mariya Payne, who is a licensed independent clinical social worker, a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, and an international brain spotting trainer and consultant. She is a somatic psychotherapist and the owner of Awaken Consulting Services, which is a private practice and consultancy where she utilizes brain spotting therapy and offers training and consultation in the treatment of trauma, somatic psychotherapies, psychedelic assisted therapy, anti-racism, and other relevant mental health topics. She also offers therapy intensive for complex PTSD and addictions, where clients work with her for multiple hours a day for a number of days to get to the root of their traumatic experiences. So, Mariya, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Not too bad at all. Like I said, it was a bit of a slower day today, but I'm excited to dive into all of this stuff with you. So, just to kind of set the stage for this, because I know even from our interactions offline and just from like your background, like clearly self-awareness is not really going to be something I'm probably going to help you with quite a bit. Like I think you come into this whole process being extremely self-aware. So I think
Yeah.
it's more prudent to then ask, like, what is it? Like, what is the biggest block you feel like you have right now inside of your business, or the biggest challenge you're trying to overcome? And then let's kind of take it from there. So is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest block is kind of going to the next iteration of what it is that I'm here to do, like in my purpose in life. And it's like having one foot on the gas and one foot on the brakes at the same time. So I still am doing all the things, yet I'm carrying like a backpack full of rocks that are weighing me down. And I suppose my goal is to get untethered with some of the new creations that I want to put out into the world and reach more people related to healing modalities and teaching, especially because it's a huge growth edge for me, using my voice and kind of being more visible. I feel like I shine when I'm teaching, and I'm absolutely terrified of it at the same time. So there's that, the gas and the brakes analogy right there showing up. My goal in the next, month is I have a lot of open time coming up, and it's time to create. Like I have content I've been wanting to put out for a while. I've got it all sketched out, and it's time to just sit down and put it together. I've opened my schedule in order to do that. And I can still feel the fear kind of showing up inside of me of like, oh God, I'm about to take this leap.
Got it. So circumstantially, you're creating an environment that's conducive for output. Like I
Right.
know what I need to do in order to produce
Hmm.
this next level of what I want to put out into the world, this next iteration of my evolution. And I know you said this off air, but like my vehicle is really or sorry, my business is a vehicle or a mirror of my own personal development. And
Right.
I agree with that as well. I always say, like, you want to actually do personal development, it's like, have a kid, get into a conscious relationship, or start a business. Like those are generally the best paths
Yep. I
towards
got
doing
two of the
that.
three.
Yeah. So there
No
you
kids, but
go.
yeah, the other two definitely will
Perfect.
mirror
So
everything back.
yeah. So I know we're on the same page with regards to that. Um, and it seems like right now the fear of what it means to step into that next level
Mhm.
is kind of the main brake on the gas you're wanting to push. So just before I go on, like, does that resonate with you, or like, is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that hits it on the head.
Okay, perfect. So I know you, like I said before, you probably spent a lot of time analyzing why that is. You probably have a good idea of why that is. You understand why it is, how it is, etc.
Mhm.
So what I'm curious about is, do you spend a lot of time thinking about, well, what is it that I actually want? What is it that's actually next? Like, who would I be without these fears? So, are you cool if we start there?
Yeah, yeah, we can start there. Yes, I have, and there's times where I can really fly with that. Like I told you yesterday with the sets and all the stuff we were working on, it was like, oh, I'm so in it, right? Like it felt really good. And I'm feeling even the high of that today in the way that I've been talking to people and in the meetings I've had, of really living it. And I would say maybe 50% of the time, it's like really hard to, I can see it, I can feel it. And frankly, I know I'm going to get there because that's just who I am. Like I always want to progress and find a way. Um, but there's some parts of me that are still really frightened about, well, if I do it, then what if I lose everything I have built, or cancel culture, all that stuff. So those are the drivers that are keeping me from expansion.
Yeah. So 50% of the time, I'm some version of fear, doubt, concern, etc. Okay. So
Mhm.
that, like 50% of the time, pressing the brake, 50% of the time, I'm in kind of pure gas mode. Like I just,
Yeah.
I'm excited to do the thing. Okay.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's a lot of energy because it's like if you're
Yeah.
50% of the time in fear, okay, that's fair. But then it's also like, there is like a catalyst energy that you need in order to overcome that. Like I got to will myself out of that fear, which is then like, if we're looking at this in like a number, it's like, okay, well, I got to use extra, 10, 20, 30% of my energy to just like get through that state and
Totally.
do something that normally would have taken, only a small percentage of my actual energy. So it's a lot of wasted resources, like inner
Yeah.
resources to deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that
Agreed.
resonates. So
Mhm.
going back to then the original thing, so like, who would you be without this fear? Like, if you lost the ability to be afraid of these things, like, who are you?
I think I would be really comfortable with myself and in my own skin. And like I said, I probably would be a lot less tired because I spend a lot of time thinking about all of the possible things that could go wrong, which is a huge energy drain. And it's a worry, the worrying energy it takes a lot from your psyche and your body to put that out. So, um, I think I would also be living in a place of like total alignment with the universe then, because a lot of letting go of the fear means, at least for me, surrendering and like trusting that I'm going to be in the river and I'm going where I need to go and I'm not swimming against the current. So there's like a faith piece that's there, not necessarily in a religious way, but really on a spiritual level. That's like, I'm going to go where I feel the currents pulling me. And the currents have been pulling me in this direction of going to this next stage of like speaking and teaching and maybe doing a TED talk and all that stuff. Even doing podcasts, right, is like it starts to edge against that fear. So I feel like ease, my word for the year has been ease. Like I pick a word for each year, what I want to focus and uh, intend to embody. And I feel like I've been making huge progress this year and stepping into that. And so fascinating that as I do that, my business reflects it. And like we're seeing more people, we're seeing more clients. The structures and systems are in place, they're flowing, and I am like stepping back more and more and more, and I want to do more of that.
So, my working definition of faith is the intersection of desire and expectation. Like,
Hmm.
where those two intersect, if you can hold that energy, it's like, this is what I want and I expect it to happen. So what I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing from your share is like you have a good idea of the desires that you want. You have a fairly clear picture of like, okay, well, this is how I would operate without these fears. This is what's available to me.
Mm-hmm.
What I feel like is lacking is the expectation piece. Like I don't know if it really sounds to me, at least from that share, that like you actually expect that to materialize in the way that you can envision it. So is that accurate or not?
I think so. it's split. There is a part of me that is very strong-willed, the one that's probably like the one that make uses those resources to make it happen anyway. That's like, yeah, absolutely, I'm gonna get there because I am so driven. But even as you were talking and saying that back to me, I was like, oh yeah, there's definitely some woundedness inside that's like, no, we're never gonna make it. These are pipe dreams. you know what you want is unattainable. You want too much. Why would you deserve it? um there's so many people better than you. You don't know what you're talking. It's like there's the loop, there's the tape right there.
Right. So basically, as soon as I shine the mirror on the expectation of what you intellectually know,
Hmm.
the inner critic like comes in hard and like full force.
For sure.
And it seems to me that it's kind of like through this process of like discerning, okay, well, do I actually believe that I can like that it can happen? There's also this very strong-willed, almost stubborn part that's like, well, no, for sure I'm gonna like get there.
Hmm.
And since I mean, I know you did like the whole assessment and stuff like that before coming on to here. So like your dominant pattern out of that is like I outwork my way through all problems.
Correct. Yes.
Right. So going back to the whole resource management bit, right? So
Hmm.
I'm going to spend 80% of my strong will energy to basically overcome through will, through force, through a lot of stubbornness,
Hmm.
this inner critic almost to like prove it wrong or to just work so hard that I don't hear it anymore.
I'm
Right.
laughing because this is literally teenage me with my parents.
Right. And it's also very likely that the inner critic is that parentified voice as well.
Correct. Yes, it is.
Right. So the question then really becomes is like, okay, how do you want to build the next stage of your business?
Mhm. I mean, like I said, ease, flow, creativity, being able to sit down. I've been envisioning myself having a lot of fun, sitting down and making the PowerPoints and recording the videos. We've got, all the camera gear and all that stuff. So in the physical realm, we've been working really hard to get everything ready. And and I just want to have a blast. And I want to be totally okay if I make mistakes and learn from them. It's going to be part of the process. It's not There's nothing that's out there that's perfect. So, um playfulness and ease would be my criteria, my hopeful criteria.
Right. I think the key word there is hopeful
Mhm. Mhm.
because like hope is a beautiful mask that we put on disbelief, right?
Mhm.
Like I hope it will end up being this way. But it's like the immediate moment that I even just reflect back your way that like, do you really expect to build the next stage of your business with ease, flow, and fun? It's like a barrage of inner critics, right? So it's like, well, it's much easier to say, I hope it's different
Mhm.
versus I don't really, or part of me, the dominant part of me doesn't really believe
Mhm.
that that's doable. So
Yeah,
just like what resonates with you from that reflection?
it's like 40-60. It feels like 40% of me could have it be easy and playful, and the 60% is like, yeah, no, you're gonna have panic attacks. You're gonna be freaking out. You're gonna be tearing your hair out. That's uh yeah, that's how it is. It's really split.
Correct. And I think that's accurate given your results,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Even on the assessment, well, I outwork my way through problems.
Hmm.
Cool. Then your limiter with regards to how big you can go is how much of an output can you sustain,
Right.
knowing
Yeah.
that you're probably wasting 60% of that output just to keep yourself regulated.
Correct.
Okay. So that's a lot of space
Hmm.
where it could actually be inserted with ease and fun.
Hmm.
but right now the ease and fun doesn't feel safe,
Correct.
doesn't feel appropriate,
Yeah.
right? So I know you know all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So then the real question I think for you is, okay, if you know all of these things, why do you think you haven't been able to change
Mm. I mean, long held family patterns. I come from a family of workaholics. So, even today, it's like everybody in my family work, 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 work. And that's,
it? So I'm just gonna pause you right there, not because
sure.
what you're saying is irrelevant, but
Hmm.
more because the original question was, why do you think you can't change it? Where your brain went to was basically giving me a higher resolution answer of like why you are the way that you are.
Hmm.
So
Why do I think I can't change it?
correct. Or in other words, why do you think your brain deflects? Why can't I change what I know?
I think, well, probably because it feels impossible or it feels not safe. Those are the two main
Okay.
red flags coming up where it's like, ding, 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 ding.
So it feels impossible and not safe to change.
Hmm.
Okay. So I would say there's the crux of a big part of your bottleneck. Because if
Hmm.
a part of you, and a dominant part of you, does not believe to a degree that it feels impossible for you to be any different than you are,
Hmm.
then to what degree are you actually gonna expect realistically, like with embodied belief, that you can get what you desire?
Hmm. I think it's challenging at that level. And again, there's like fragmentation there where it's like, oh, some parts of me feel like, no, that's not true. And I have visible evidence in my life how that's showed up. And I'm like breaking all the barriers that I've had bit by bit. But yeah, I would say that deeper down, there's definitely a place inside that's like, you can't do this. It's literally not safe. Don't do it. I hear my mom's voice because me being an entrepreneur was like, oh my gosh, and she's like blown away with how far I've come. But I do hear her voice being like, don't do it. You have to have the safety of the 9 to 5 and all that stuff that I grew up with.
Yeah. And listen, also coming from an immigrant background, I understand that voice
Yeah.
to 200%. So I get that,
Yeah.
right?
It gets in there deep.
It certainly does. Takes a lot of good roots in there that need to be weeded out. Yeah,
Correct.
100%. Um, so if fundamentally what is being repeated as soon as change is essentially brought up
Hmm.
feels impossible, does not feel to change. This is so deep rooted, it's so hard. Okay.
Hmm.
How ready are you to actually change?
I mean, consciously, what popped into my head is, yeah, I am ready because I've
Mhm.
made actual physical changes in the world, in my world to adapt to it. Now it's like time to step in to what I believe is for me to create. Um,
Well, I mean, you've set certain circumstances that
hmm.
require certain act. Like I'm kind of, there's an aspect of my circumstance right now where I burnt the bridges,
Hmm.
which is fine. And if we now look at your patterns, you are likely to outwork and get out of those circumstances okay in the end.
Hmm.
Like you're likely going to push through and make whatever you need to make happen to get
Hmm.
through this next seemingly tumultuous chapter,
Hmm.
right? That's what
Hmm.
history shows us. But that's a different question than essentially the ambivalence that you find yourself in now,
Hmm.
right? Consciously, I realize I want and have a desire to be a lot more peaceful in how I operate my business, to
Hmm.
not waste, 60% of my energy dealing with this stuff. But
Hmm.
the readiness and the willingness to actually transcend those things always seem to be kind of deflected or default to, I'm just going to will my way out of it. So again,
Mm,
same question is like in your relationship to that part of you that holds you back,
mhm.
how ready do you think you actually are to change?
Me towards that part or that part itself?
Potentially both.
I think I am willing to change that part, or help that part change and kind of come back into the present moment and not be living in the traumas of the past. Um, Let me just check in with that aspect of me itself. It's like listening. It's listening to this conversation. Um,
And it probably is not too fond of me having to put the mirror to it as well. So yes, that's also okay.
yeah, yeah. Um, Honestly, I'm really sick of suffering with it, you know? It's like deep in the heart there is a desire to have something new, and that is really what I'm after, because you read all the thing assessments that I sent in. Like, I have been burnt out for a long, long time. I have pushed and pushed and pushed till I couldn't anymore. And this year has really been the year where it's like you're gonna let go of these patterns, even if it's painful or difficult, which I've always been able to face that stuff, and be vulnerable. I think that's a huge asset, even if it's uncomfortable. So yeah, maybe the part itself is very cautious, um, but curious about this conversation. Let's
Okay,
leave it there.
good. That's
Listening.
fair. That is fair. That the fact that it's open, and I think that's actually it's kind of the most honest language I've heard
Mm,
about you actually wanting to change.
mhm,
Okay, because the cost of that change is giving up patterns that have been around for decades,
mhm,
right? And right now, your past is sabotaging your present,
mhm.
but all of that past, like that is very much a resolvable like issue. They're all resolvable patterns.
Good to hear
So,
that.
sorry.
It's good to hear that they are all resolvable patterns.
Okay, perfect. So, why was that soothing to hear, given how much expertise you have in this area? And
Mhm,
despite all of that, the initial default reaction was like, it's impossible and not safe. And then suddenly I
mhm.
say that, well, yeah, these are all resolvable and there's a relief there. So why?
I think the relief is about, um, I'm having some like memories show up even. It's like when your parent or somebody important in your life constantly has this message of saying you can't do it, you begin to doubt yourself, right? And it's like, well, maybe I really can't do it. And then to hear someone else say, hey, these things are actually resolvable, it comes as a relief to be like, well, other people have done it, other people are doing it. Many of us grow up in these kinds of situations and we break through. I help people heal for a living. I see people heal from things that are impossible. So it brought that up for me. That's like, yeah, even this aspect is not something that is so far tucked away that it can't come into the light.
Perfect. So then to what degree have you been allowing yourself to get help and support for this particular aspect?
hmm Um, I think I've been doing a pretty good job of that this year, and years past. And I actually reached out to a mentor that I trust, and I know his schedule is usually really, really full. But I asked if he would do some sessions with me, and last Monday he said yes. Um, and so that I'm really looking forward to that. And he's actually in the same community and does the same work that I do. Um, so I think that that's good. And honestly, I do a lot of healing work on myself all the time. with seeing other clinicians and also on a physical level because I have Lyme's disease. So I've been working through a lot of stuff with that. Um, I wouldn't say that I've directly focused on this topic, like actively and consciously in a session with them. But with the mentor that I was talking about, I'm about to do that because I know he's going to be able to help me with some of the creations I'm going to make anyway. So I would say it's a bit of both, kind of about to do some focused work and have been doing childhood trauma work.
Perfect. And I think that's a very important portion of this, right? Because it's always like one of those things, the easiest person to lie to is ourselves,
Hmm.
right? So, and I always talk about this with people that, are into work or are really like smart or like have like a high intellectual understanding of things where we get caught up in this thing of like creating a higher resolution problem.
Mm.
So when I describe that, it's like if I ask you to draw a house, right? And if you draw like a square with a triangle on top, a little chimney, doors, windows, like boom, that's a house.
Hmm.
Most people can recognize that's a house, right?
Sure.
But if you took that and then like you projected lines outward, you made it 3D, started shading it in, started adding color, started adding a yard, started adding like a sky and a landscape, it's like it's still a house. It's a much more beautiful house, totally higher resolution, like great, and it's still fundamentally a house.
Mhm.
When we do that to our problems, what we end up doing is we spend a whole lot of time creating high resolution problems because we believe that if I understand it better, I will be able to solve it.
Mhm.
But it's like the energy of the solution and the energy of awareness, they're actually like two different energies,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So when I hear you describing this whole thing of like, well, yeah, I understand exactly where it's coming from. I've dove into a lot of the trauma. I get it. And as soon as I begin to even imagine my life without it, it seems
Mhm.
impossible and not safe to change. Okay. Well, then to what degree have you just been painting a higher resolution house versus working on the things you need to do, which is embody the results in a place where you can show it, which in this instance is your business. So
Mhm.
just curious what comes up for you with that.
I would say in the type of work that I'm doing, it isn't just understanding based or cognitive. I do nervous system reprocessing therapy. So, both as a practitioner and when I was telling you about receiving. So, the embodiment piece is really, I mean, you can understand something in your head and then living it is a totally different experience. So I'd say, as I was mentioning, so far, the progress that I've been making has been really benefiting from doing those things. I haven't brought this specific issue to, the top of the table in a session, but like I said last week when I was thinking about, oh yeah, August coming around the corner here. Should probably reach out to David and talk to him about this and set up some sessions to work on it. Um, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do that. So I would say it's both um, and that the impossible, like I said, the impossible part, it's like a big boulder in a river, right? Like it's blocking the flow, but I feel like I'm moving beyond understanding and going into embody. It's how I've made the progress that I've made. I would think that, I mean, I have decent intellect, but also EQ around stuff. So it's about knowing when and how and doing it, actually doing it, doing the actions of the embodiment and setting those steps together, if that's making any sense.
Yeah, 110% it's making sense. So what would those steps look like for you?
So kind of how I envision the next like few weeks going before the end of August, my schedule opens up, is tactically finishing up what I have on my plate right now, which is happening. More and more stuff is going to my assistant too. She's been with me for over a year now, so that's feeling good. Then doing some of the sessions for brain spotting therapy because I found that to be just really, really profound and rapid in getting rid of this type of baggage. So I have that set up, and the actual change is really like I'm going to be sitting in this space. We've beautified it. It's now like fully functional office, and um putting on some music that I like. I've been listening to old music that I loved when I was growing up, having a cup of tea and like just letting myself write. I also reached out to one of my friends who's a therapist, and she hosts like writing groups and things like that. So she does like a morning drop-in writing group, and it's just free writing for like half an hour. We don't talk, we just write. And so I checked in, and I'm going to drop into that like once or twice a week as well, so I can just get in the flow of doing that again and not be judging, because the goal is to write without judgment. So I think those are some of the action steps I'm getting ready to take. And I'm pretty serious about it because it is really like now or never. Because if I ruin this again, again, and I fill my schedule up with all this stuff, I just don't think I'm going to end up ever really going there and doing the stuff that I want to do, or it's going to be what feels like FOMO or too late, the timing of what's some of the stuff that I'm wanting to create with what's happening politically, what's happening with systems, breaking down in the world, uh, mission and on a soul level, like feels really important to like speak now. It's time to speak. It's time to do it. As they say, you got to do it or you got to get off the pot. I'll,
Yeah.
I'll leave out the expletives.
If you need to swear on here, you can totally swear.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I
I don't
could.
mind. That's all good.
Just being careful.
That's all good. But listen, own whatever expression you want. Like this is actually a
Eh,
perfect example,
all
right? So
right.
there you
Well,
go,
you got to
right?
shit or get off the pot,
There you
Mari.
go. You don't need to apologize for your own authentic expression. So
I appreciate
yeah,
that.
all good. Okay, so then as far as let's just say looking at today and mapping out kind of your biggest, roadblock in this instance, like does
Mhm.
this feel like you have higher awareness around that, or is there still something that's left outstanding?
Um, like putting up the magnifying glass today is really helpful. I can feel my body having a response to it. So I'm a smash, really my body is loud. It talks a lot. So even right there is like the the trauma showing up. Um,
And if you're
it's
cool with
great
it, like
fodder.
what's the internal feeling that's coming up for you?
Um, fear,
Hmm.
anxiety, and a layer of shame that's old. It's like really old. I've had this for much of my life.
And towards what? Somebody kind of scrutinizing you towards this, or like towards what?
Um, I think it's fear of failure. And can you ask the question again? Is it towards?
So you mentioned, okay, there's like fear, there's anxiety, there's old shame that's coming
Mhm,
up in my body as we have this
mhm,
conversation.
mhm.
So when you intuitively tune in to where that is directed to, right? Kind of this idea like you can't be triggered if you're not loaded. So which part of you is loaded right now by the things that I'm asking?
Gotcha. Um, I think it's the fear of failure and like not making it.
Okay. And towards what? The next iteration of your business, towards the next few weeks where your schedule is clean, like towards what? More general.
I think it's the actual outcome of being seen.
Okay.
Like the anxiety is really like facing that, and like you're gonna be seen. Are you ready for that? You know, part
Right.
of me is ready. Another part of me is like, no.
Right. But as you know, it's like the fear
I'll
always
stay
goes
small.
first. Right. So I think
Yeah,
that's also part of it is again, like what would your life be like without that fear? Because that fear is absolutely something that you can eliminate quickly.
Hmm. I think life would be beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now then the question is that more powerful for you than the fear?
Yes, and I want to embody being in it more so that it's not like an idea, it's actually a felt sense experience.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
Because I think that's kind of what we started with, the crux of the like I have the desire, but I don't have the expectation.
Mhm.
All of the things you've mentioned from it feels impossible, it's not safe to change, the fear of failure, the fear of being visible,
Mhm.
all of that is diminishing the expectation and creating that major like energy leak towards moving
Mhm.
forward.
Mhm.
So does that kind of move this to a close for you, or is there still something left outstanding?
Mm. Oh no, let me think. It's it's feeling when I focus on doing it and I actually stay in that embodiment and when I look back to the last 4 years of building all of this, I have come farther than I ever thought I would. You know, my 20-year-old self, my drug addict self that was shooting up drugs for 8 years blows her away that we're here and even alive, frankly, for that matter. So, believing that anything is possible is a belief I have, and it's something that I've been living in, and I want to just step into that, right? And like, just, you got this.
Yeah,
You've been getting it. So it's really the time now to just take a breath and like see the evidence, right? And not have to outwork it either. 'Cause that's a big thing. Like I said, I can get there. I know I will, working my way, but will I be happy if I do it like that? And I know the answer is no, because of some of the experiences that I've had in the last few years with doing too much and burning out. Um, but it is feeling possible. The magnifying glass helps. Having somebody else there to reflect it and just target it directly is helpful.
good. Well, I'm glad to hear. And yeah, in your instance, the work is really just a coping mechanism.
Hmm.
Like the harder you work, the less you're actually going to face any of this. Right. And I know
Totally.
you know
Yeah.
that on a certain level as well. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so if this feels complete for you, at least in terms of like mapping this out, I know, inside of this scope, it's not like we can go into like actually eliminating these patterns.
Sure.
Um, are you okay with moving this to a close? Like, does that
Sure.
feel good? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, in
Thank you.
that case, yeah, you're very welcome, and thank you for as far as visibility goes, this is probably the worst way to do it. So kudos to you,
But,
for that.
I was like, all right, here we go.
Yeah, yeah. So I acknowledge you for that.
Thank
Um,
you.
so yeah, if you want to let everybody know, where to find you, who's the best person to find you, floor is yours for that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can find me on my website. It's awakenconsultingservices.com. I also have the same handles for Facebook and Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn too, that way with my business page. And yeah, be looking out for some new content coming by the end of the year for somatic psychotherapy and psychedelic assisted therapy and just educating on trauma and mental health in general on Instagram. So that's what we're working on.
Awesome. Love it. Well,
Thank you.
Mariya, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for allowing yourself to be seen in this way. And for everybody else listening, we'll see you on the next one.
Sweet. Thanks.